50 days the Russian army is haunted by a series of accidents. Columns of armored vehicles are burning, planes and helicopters are falling, ammunition depots and oil depots are exploding. Recently, the flagships of the Navy have also been sinking. But do not think that this is due to the actions of the Ukrainian army, because the Russians have already said that they destroyed the Ukrainian air defense and aviation. Some Russians are sure that their troops are already storming the last checkpoint of the Ukrainian Nazis near Lisbon. And Kiev itself was taken, but left by the Russian troops as a sign of goodwill. Inside the country, reality is maximally distorted. Doubt is forbidden.
Our planes were taken away from us, but we Russians are supermen. Now you are in Moscow, and in 3 seconds, in Kaliningrad. We are Russians, we have a teleporter with us. The video was filmed with the support of Vladimir Putin. With the participation of Vladimir Solovyov and Margarita Simonyan. On the territory of the Russian Federation it is forbidden not to believe in teleport.
The accidents are explained by the ridiculous newspeak of Russian propaganda. An attack on a sovereign state is a military special operation. Looting is a war trophy. Killing civilians, liberation from Nazism. Undermining warehouses, smoking in the wrong place. A successful missile attack on a cruiser is nothing more than a fire. However, this is only one of the versions. According to the Russians, the fire on the ship caused the ammunition to detonate aboard the cruiser. The ship remained afloat and was towed to the Crimea, but there was a storm and it sank. The forces of nature intervened in the plans of the Russian Navy, and this is God's providence. It can be said that before the storm, the blessed fire descended on the cruiser. Here's Ukrainian story, not confirmed by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Bayraktar crept up to the Russian warship and disabled the radar. Further, 2 Ukrainian Neptune missiles hit the cruiser on board. The ship sank. This is a simple, realistic story.
The Neptune missile flies towards the enemy ship a few meters above the water. It can be launched 200 kilometers from the target, but the Russians could detect it in a storm too late.
На відстані 300 кілометрів від точки, де розгорнута пускова установка.
We saw an explosion. We saw an explosion.
There is also a conspiracy theory. Ukraine knows nothing. Neptunes don't fly. The Ukrainian opposition claims that Zelensky closed the missile program, so it was the British Harpoon missiles, or the Norwegian Penguin. This pleases Russian conspiracy theorists, because death from NATO missiles is not so shameful.
The Russian military department, which always reacts quickly to reports from Ukraine, says that there was no Ukrainian missile. Military expert Alexei Melnik is in touch with us.
Хотя, казалось бы, почему нет? Алексей Мельник с нами на связи. Алексей, здравствуйте.
Alexei, how do you explain why the Russians do not admit that they were hit by a Ukrainian missile? They say that there was a fire, ammunition exploded.
Слышать не хотят. Был пожар, взорвались боеприпасы. Все, это все, что мы готовы рассматривать.
This is a complete shame for the flagship, which is designed to not only protect itself, but the whole group. There is a powerful air defense system, and here it turns out that the ship was hit by 2 missiles.
Флагманского корабля, который, в общем-то, предназначен для того, чтобы не только себя защищать, но и целую группировку. То есть у него мощнейшая система ПВО, опять-таки, должна быть. И тут просто получается, что украинцы какими-то 2 ракетами вот так вот взяли и практически там потопили его.
Here's my theory. Russian sailors saw another patriotic show on TV and caught fire. Then there was an explosion of ammunition. Perhaps this happened after the arrest in Ukraine of oligarch Viktor Medvedchuk, who is close to Putin. On the eve of the war, he was detained for the first time, but he escaped and tried to move to the Russian Federation. The FSB took part in his rescue, but nothing came of it. Once again, I note that my version is still better than the version of the Russian Navy, because it does not exist.
В спасении рядового теробороновца брало участие ФСБ. И абсолютно непонятно, почему в таком случае пластику сделали Оксане, а не Виктору. Замечу, что моя версия все равно лучше, чем версия ВМФ РФ, потому что ее нет.
And now let's try to restore the chronology of events based on messages from the Maritime Forum, as well as from the Turkish and Romanian military. An hour 5 minutes. The International Maritime Forum publishes an SOS signal from the cruiser Moskva. 1 hour 14 minutes. According to radio messages, the missile cruiser is laying on the port side. Further explosions are reported. 1 hour 47 minutes. Engine room disabled. The engines are not running. 2 hours 7 minutes. After evaluating the information received, Turkey reports that the cruiser Moskva can sink with a probability of 99.9% in the next hour. Turkish ship rescues 54 sailors. 2 hours 48 minutes. Turkish and Romanian authorities learn that the missile cruiser has sunk. A little later it became known that 14 sailors were somehow delivered to Sevastopol. They are injured. This means that at the moment we understand that between 54 and 68 crew members were rescued. The fate of the rest is unknown, but I think it is quite unenviable. At the same time, from all TVs in Russia they report about the national shame of Russia and the loss of a flagship worth almost $1 billion. Historians recall that Russia has not lost cruisers since the Russo-Japanese War in 1905. Some of the liberals awkwardly allude to the Kursk submarine, which happened to Putin in the early years of his rule. I remember this incredibly cynical response to Larry King.
Happened with the submarine.
She drowned.
Russians, you fed the monster and did not notice how covered with scales. You have lost, and most likely killed, 456 sailors. But you are not interested. No one, except relatives, asked the question, where are they? What is happening to them? Is there a rescue operation being carried out? No, at this time you are talking about greatness, about financial losses and about who is to blame. I will not cry for your sailors. It was they who fired cruise missiles at peaceful Ukrainian cities from the cruiser Moscow. They agreed to carry out Putin's criminal orders and they paid the price. Kismet is destiny. By the way, many Russian military men are beginning to believe in it, especially looters.
I gave away all the money. Dollars and hryvnia.
To whom?
He just walked around handing out cigarettes.
What for?
In short, it's just.
It's unclear. Repeat.
I'm telling you that whoever stole a lot here, they are no more. So I gave everything away.
And now we are returning to the Moskva cruiser again to briefly discuss why this ship is so important. She's really important. In the military and sacred senses. This is the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet. It was on it that 8 S-300 air defense systems were installed, which could simultaneously fire at a large number of air targets. According to official figures, from 8 to 12. Thus, the cruiser could effectively protect itself and other ships of the flotilla from air attack. It was from this cruiser that peaceful Ukrainian cities were shot with deadly caliber missiles. Russia proudly called the Moskva an aircraft carrier killer and, of course, a cruiser that has no equal. The ship was built at the shipyard in Nikolaev and I wouldn't be surprised if it was she who shelled Nikolaev. According to some information, after the destruction of the Russian cruiser, rocket attacks on Ukraine may be reduced by a quarter. And this is good news.
Могут сократиться сразу на 25%. И это хорошая новость.
Now about sacred meanings. Before the war in Ukraine, the cruiser participated in the blockade of Georgia and defended the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. SOSO Karma and SOSO track record. In Ukraine, the cruiser became infamous after the boarding of Serpentine Island, where the Ukrainian border guard forever set the vector of movement for the Russian ship. Thus, the Moskva cruiser became a symbol of the shameless and dishonest Russian military machine, its flagship. For Putin, infuriated by a failed ground operation, the loss of Moscow is a knockdown. Practically a disaster. It's impossible to hide it. The losses are colossal. The arrogant and invincible Russian ship sank along with the remnants of greatness. If you agree with the theory that a huge cruiser can explode from a single cigarette, but this is a shame and complete incompetence. If you choose a theory with Ukrainian junk missiles, this is complete incompetence and shame. It's time for the Russians to call Boris Johnson or Biden and beg them to say it was a James Bond and Iron Man attack. For Russian propaganda, we even prepared a video. I'm sure the Russians will believe.
There was a fire on board their warship Moskva, ignited ammunition, ship sinking while being towed for repair. Ukraine, however, claims the ship was destroyed by its missile strike.
Dear friends, I must now thank you for the financial assistance you provide to our project. Our entire team is very grateful to you and we will continue to work. Details in the description of the video. For those who watch us on YouTube, a sponsorship button has appeared, where you can help the Ukraine on Fire project with almost one click. There is also very good news. Our Spanish language version is now gaining popularity and a huge number of views. The English version, unfortunately, does not take off yet. In any case, thank you for your help.
И там появляется огромное количество просмотров. Что касается английского, то тут пока не взлетаем. В любом случае, спасибо вам за помощь.
For a long time I could not understand why the Russians, in the event of any of their failures, begin to whine about national shame. After all, this is war. There are losses on both sides. Why so many screams? The answer was found in a previous story about Murmansk, where people live in houses with cesspools instead of toilets. From time to time, drunkenly, they fall into these pits and drown. This is pure truth. So, for the sake of the greatness of their country and its military power, the Russians are ready to endure any bestial conditions. The main thing is that the army and navy can protect the Russians from enemies. And here, during a special operation, not even a war, the army is on fire, and the fleet is on fire at first, and then sinks. And the enemy is not NATO or the United States. It seems to me that after the transformation of the cruiser into a submarine, the Russians have already begun to realize that there is a war going on. But they have not yet realized that Russia is losing. The army and navy probably understand everything, but the people are still in the dark. The towers of propaganda have taken out the last remnants of their brains.
Can you believe what is shown on TV? Do you trust Kiselev? I trust. They don't do propaganda. Yes, I do. TV doesn't lie. Here Ukraine is lying for sure. Of course, we are not deceived on TV.
The TV presenter Solovyov inspires confidence. They defend our name, protect our interests. They can be trusted.
Do you think life is better in the USA than here? Russia is a freer country. Will the Russians survive a nuclear strike? We've been through a lot. I think we'll survive.
Хотели бы посетить Америку? А нахрена нам нужна? И вообще, если бы там радиоактивная пустыня была бы на месте Америки и Европы, я вот только рад был. А они нам мешают. Проще говоря, противоречие какое? Мы по разные стороны от прилавка.
Как думаете, русские смогут пережить ядерный удар?
Я даже уверен, что переживут, потому что, вы знаете, у нас
страна необъятная. Это другое дело американцам.
What does America want from
Что
Russia?
Америка хочет от России?
Америка хочет захватить Россию.
Америка как страна сильная?
Нет,
Capture
она
Russia.
же
Вы бы хотели,
Did you
чтобы
want
Россия
Russia to annex
присоединила Украину?
Ukraine?
Присоединила, нет, она в состав ее возьмет, почему бы нет?
Это слишком
No,
жестко.
it
Но
must be
можно.
taken
Как ты
into the
думаешь,
Russian
Россия переживет ядерный
Federation.
удар?
Russia will survive a nuclear strike, of course. We have more territory.
Даже, может быть, надо её
Perhaps we
сейчас
should be the
изначально
first to
В ходе
start.
последних событий как ты
Does
относишься
Russia need
к присоединению
Syktyvkar?
Сыктывкара к составу России?
Я отношусь положительно.
Сыктывкар нужен России.
Конечно.
Украинцы, в отличие от
Ukrainians,
россиян, не
unlike
должны это
Russians,
знать,
are
но
not required
Сыктывкар
to know
город
this, but
республиканского
Syktyvkar is a
значения,
Russian city,
столица
the capital of the
республики
Komi Republic.
Это Россия.
Interestingly, if a resident of Russia does not know that Syktyvkar is located in Russia, is this also a national shame or not? Let's sum up the results. The cruiser Moscow is a cherry on a cake of shit. The main intrigue is who will have to eat it? Generals or Supreme Commander Vladimir Putin. Eating together is not an option. Communion shit destroys the divine origin of power. In fact, this is very similar to the beginning of the Second World War for the USSR, when someone had to be held responsible for the defeat of the Soviet troops in the early days. Then Stalin shot the generals. This time the generals, perhaps, will be smarter. But the main thing, on May 9th, the Russians will arrange a victory parade anyway. We even have exclusive footage of his rehearsal.
Actually, the parade, or rather the solemn passage, began. And now I will show you where the attack on Belarus was being prepared from.
А я сейчас вам покажу, откуда на Беларусь готовились.
You watch the Ukraine on Fire project. The Russian Federation will be destroyed. Glory to Ukraine.
Слава Україні!